Hey guys, welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at Ridge Racer Type 4, the last game in the Ridge Racer series to be released on the PlayStation. That was released in the year of 1999, and this here was actually quite a step up graphically and in terms of gameplay style compared to the previous games in the series. Even though it still kept to its arcade roots, but the one thing that's most notable about this game is the graphical quality of the game and the style. You can definitely begin to see an evolution of the series. You can definitely gradually see it from the earlier Ridge Racer games, as you can see, like from Ridge Racer 1 all the way through to Ridge Racer and then on to this one here. And quite notably, with the release of the likes of Gran Turismo series only a year before, that really stepped up a notch in terms of game quality and graphical and visual quality within games, and particularly in racing games. So this game here is somewhat compared to that in terms of graphics, and to be honest, quite rightly so, because this here is easily one of the best looking games on the PlayStation, period. Only Gran Turismo would look slightly better, but this here definitely holds its own in terms of visual quality and style, which is awesome. Like, even with the release of the game, there was also a demo version of the original Ridge Racer game that was also released, was packaged with the game too, that actually had better quality graphics. Again, if you go and check the disc, you will see that what they were doing was they used the original Ridge Racer game and they tried to use it as a template to try and work with the types of graphics. They wanted to see how far they could really push the quality of the graphics and even the frame rate in the games at that time. So they used the original game because, again, it would have been easier to work with because it's a much smaller game in scale compared to this one. And they bumped up the graphics, and the graphics actually in the original game, the Ridge Racer Turbo demo, is actually phenomenal. Technically, with that game, you get pretty much the full game. You get all the tracks, and you can go through the whole progress of the campaign. You just don't get access to the likes of some of the soundtracks, and you don't have all the cars on screen that you would normally have had in the original game. But then that's due to the frame rate. But it states on it as well, there's an information catalogue on it as well that states that the reason why the graphics wasn't probably not as good is because they could only really get to a maximum of 30 frames per second in the game. If they tried to bump it up anymore, it started to glitch and to bug out. So that's why even this here game, even though graphically it's phenomenal, Ridge Racer 4, that it still only runs at 30 frames per second, because the PlayStation, even as good as it was, if they tried to push beyond that, it did start to cause a lot of issues. So they had to kind of work within their limits. Now, that's not to say that today that you can do that, because even the likes of emulators, and even with the likes of remade consoles, the likes of the PlayStation Classic, again, they use emulation hardware, and even likes of on phones and Android tablet devices and phones, that they can use emulators that can actually bump up and scale up the quality that was way beyond what the PlayStation was actually capable of back in those days. And you can see it with a lot of videos even on the internet, even with the likes of this video here. You're able to scale the video up to double or even up to 4 times its original quality, so everything is smoothed out. To be honest, actually, a lot of the games would actually look like that they're actually on a PC version of a game, which is quite phenomenal, and it shows that the graphics on the PlayStation they still look cool even by today's standards. But going back to this game, it definitely was a massive step up, even in terms of likes of Ridge Racer that came out. Even though Ridge Racer is kind of like a game in its own right, but it still stays within the Ridge Racer franchise. And you can see the changes in that game, and that game was released 2 years prior in 1997, and that was also a phenomenal game. Again, each of the games in the series, I've also done videos on them. I'll make sure to drop a link to a playlist down in the description so you can go and watch them all and check them all out. And you could definitely see the step up with this here game. But again, I think, like I said, Gran Turismo definitely set the standard in terms of visual quality for the games. So Namco really wanted to really set up its own visual style, and alongside Gran Turismo, Ridge Racer 4 is also considered to be, they are the two pretty much the best looking racing games on the PlayStation, hands down, because the visuals are absolutely stunning on them. Considering that they were really pushing the PlayStation to the limits, and back, and this was like PS1 22 years ago as of recording this video. It is amazing to think that they were really able to push the limits of the console and to actually get as much out of it, to actually get games that looked as good as this here. It is quite, you know, incredible, like, for what they were able to do. But at the same time, us as gamers, we got to experience that firsthand and got to enjoy it, and we got to see the fruits of the labour of the development teams and see what was actually possible. And again, what we got out of it, we got fantastic games. I will admit, going back to playing the original games, I just like the initial feel of the original games. But again, they were just more simple arcade and they were old school. This here definitely tried to put a bit of more realism into it as well. But you can see where this was actually going, because then if you go on to the likes of later entries in the series on other consoles, the likes of the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, it even appeared on the Xbox as well. And you could see that the style was very similar to what goes on here in Ridge Racer 4, even at Ridge Racer 7. I remember when I got my first PlayStation 3 way back in 2007, and the very first game I got with it was Ridge Racer 7, because again, I do love racing games, but I was always a big fan of the Ridge Racer franchise anyway. And even though it was definitely a lot more futuristic, but you can see the visual representation was very, very similar in terms of a style from what you would see here in Ridge Racer 4. So you could definitely see the evolution of the games and where the franchise was actually going at that point. They were trying to go away from the original kind of concept of simplistic graphics with arcade elements, but they tried to make it more realistic, but still tried to keep that arcade feel. But I'll be honest, actually Namco actually did perfect it over the years. They really did, in terms of the aesthetics and the visual style. Now I will say that the likes of the last entry that I remember, but way back in 2012 or 2013, Ridge Racer Unbounded, although a good racing game in its own right, but it wasn't really a Ridge Racer game in terms of what was going on. It didn't feel like a Ridge Racer game at all, but again, it was a completely different spin-off. It's like they were trying to go off in a different direction, try to take the Ridge Racer series in a different direction, but it just really wouldn't work. For the likes of games like these here, they need to stick to their roots, in my opinion, and this is where the likes of these games come in. Even though Ridge Racer 4 is definitely an evolution of the series, but it's still stuck true to its original concepts and ideas, and I think that's what made it really, really successful. Again, this game went on to sell tons of copies on the PlayStation. Only just the Gran Turismo games and a few other racing games, likes of Colin McRae Rally, which again is a totally different style of racing game, they would have sold more. But this here is definitely up there with the best on the PlayStation, and it's definitely among what the best of the PlayStation has to actually offer. So I definitely recommend, if you haven't already played Ridge Racer Type 4 or even heard of it, then you need to definitely go and check it out. It takes a bit of getting used to. It's probably not as easy to pick up and play, I will admit, compared to the previous titles, although the previous games did take a bit to get used to as well, but when you did get used to it, you were able to master it. This here, the handling physics on the car is definitely more noticeable compared to other games in the series as well, so you just definitely have to take a bit of time to fiddle out. But this is a fantastic game, and it is one of the best racing games on the PlayStation, hands down, so I definitely recommend you go and you play it, for sure. So I'd love to know your thoughts on Ridge Racer Type 4, or even any of the games in the Ridge Racer series. Have you played them, and if so, what are your thoughts and experiences on them? Make sure to share them down in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be updated whenever I release future content, and also share the video, as I am going to be re-exploring a lot of these old fantastic classic games and sharing my thoughts, opinions and experiences with everyone. So as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.